Sujeet ji, good morning, Sujeet ji. Sujeet ji, can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me? Lord Sujeet has joined. Sujeet ji is from MP from Biju Janata Dal from Kalahandi district. So he has also joined, and I think he had some problem, audio problem.
Sir, he's already joined, sir, and probably he is testing his mic right now.
Okay, so आप हमको देख लीजिए अगर कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो, ठीक है ना?
Yeah, Sujit sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Sujeet sir, good morning, and honorable.
Good morning,
Justice,
Professor Sinha. Good morning. Very good morning.
and we are very happy that you have accepted our request. And let me just not Justice Arijit Prasad sir has also joined, Professor Anderson sir, Professor Raj Kumar, and all other participants and faculty members of the Indian Law Institute have joined this program. And
Manoj, can I suggest that you keep your computer a little further from you so that we will be able to see more of you?
okay, thank you. So I think, Lord, should we start?
Yeah, we can start.
Nivedita, over to you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. A very good morning to all the dignitaries present today with us. I, Nivedita Chaudhary, PhD scholar at Indian Law Institute, feel immense pride and privilege in welcoming you all to the webinar on National Education Policy 2020, Right Steps Towards Inclusive Higher Education, organized by Indian Law Institute. Before we start, I would like to request all the participants to kindly put their microphones on mute and turn their cameras off for a better and uninterrupted session. I would now like to welcome our honorable speakers and the guest of honor for the day, Honorable Dr. Justice Arijit Pasayar, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, Professor Dr. N.L. Mitra, former Vice Chancellor, National Law School Bangalore, NLU Jodhpur, and Chancellor, KIIT University Bhubaneswar. Dr. Achyut Samanta, Member of Parliament, Biju Janata Dal, and founder, KIIT University. Dr. Sujeet Kumar, Member of Parliament, Biju Janata Dal. Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, Vice Chancellor, OP Jindal Global University, and Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha, Director, Indian Law Institute. Today, we have gathered here to discuss and talk about the most landmark policy of recent times, the National Education Policy. The policy has dominated discussions ever since it was announced a few months ago. The policy has brought about sweeping changes in the way India has approached education so far. The policy has stressed on the idea that education is a continuous and lifelong learning process and also intends to reduce dropouts as it provides for multiple entries and exit points in degree courses. This session, therefore, will be about exploring the potential of the policy. In light of this note, I would like to commence today's session and would like to invite our first speaker for the day, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha, Director, Indian Law Institute, to give the introductory address and also to welcome our guests. Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Yes, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Nivedita. Honorable Justice Arijit Pasayar, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, and also actively associated with the Indian Indian Law Institute. Sir was academic council member for many years and guided us time to time regarding the academic activities of the Indian Law Institute. I never feel hesitate to approach sir. So when this new education policy came to my mind, I wanted somebody and I thought sir is the best person who has guided us number of years in the Indian Law Institute for its academic activity. I'm very pleased, sir, that you have accepted our request and you are going to enlighten all of us on the new education policy today. Uh, I also would like to thank respected Professor Anil Mitra, sir, former Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Bangalore, former Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Jodhpur, and active member of the Bar Council of India. And sir is actively involved in the various academic activities. And we look forward for his guidance and support. And I hope that in sir's age, I don't want to disclose sir age today, but at the sir's age, we'll be able to do same activities what sir is doing. Sir, you are a source of inspiration for all of us. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting our request. I'm also very happy to introduce great politicians and great human being. I had an opportunity to meet Dr. Sujeet Kumar just couple of days back. And in fact, the entire idea occurred in our interaction, my interaction with the Dr. Sujeet Kumar in the Indian Law Institute couple of days back. Sir, you came and we discussed about the education policy. We discussed about the other political matters as well. And I got some spark from there. I thought, why not I invite you for this new education policy? And particularly, we discussed about the inclusive education. That is the important point which we had in the mind and which we want to hear from the speakers as well. How far this policy, new education policy, is going to take care of the weakest sections of the society. That was the idea we both discussed, and you supported the idea, and today we are here. I'm really thankful to you that you have accepted our request and you are here today to address all of us. I'm sure that your speech will help to understand the real problem, because this known for its a lot of issues, particularly early 90s and 94, 95, the number of regions. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting our request. Now I would like to introduce, I'd like to welcome our good friend, good colleague, supporter, and source of inspiration for us for doing extensively a huge work in the field of education. Not his writings, even if you I have circulated in the morning in Nivedita, and maybe later on we'll circulate all the members. The amount of literature or amount of writings Rajkumar has contributed in the new education policy in last couple of days is immense. And both in Hindi and English, he has contributed significantly. And his contribution for creating a world-class institution. World-class institution. Not only legal, it has everything. But initially we think only it's a law school. But Jindal Global University has all the branches. It has social sciences, it has law, it's a management. And I'm sure that other branches will also come in due course. We are very thankful, Rajkumar, that we all are going to hear you to your speech, and also for accepting our short note, have accepted our. I think that Achyuta Samanta sir will join. I'm not sure he has joined today, but I welcome sir also for accepting our request. Who join anytime in this webinar. Let me just quickly say few words, because we have many speakers, so I don't want to go on the new education policy. But new education policy, actually, if I see changes will take place in coming years, maybe by 2040. So another 2 decades, we'll say we have to change drastically. At present, what we see that in India, we have around 950 universities. We have 412 state universities. We have around 104 deemed universities and 53 central university and 361 private universities we have. The major change which this particular education policy has done, it talks about because this state university, they affiliate around 45 to 50,000 colleges in India. And what this particular new education policy emphasizes on, that all these colleges have to gradually become autonomous colleges over the years, so like by 2030 some, and by 2040. So autonomous colleges will have a position to offer and set the question paper, everything. So if some way control from the state university will be reduced. That is the first. Second, it has introduced some kind of liberal approach, lifelong learning process. Like one can join the law school, or one can join in the social science or any department, and for any reasons he has to come out from this college. If he completes 1 year, he gets a diploma. If he completes 2 years, he gets the advanced diploma. And if he completes 3 years, he gets the graduate degree. So exit has been also, multiple exit has been given. And he can come back. He can come back and join on the education later on. The another last point which I have also in my mind and which is very relevant, that is it talks about multidisciplinary universities. So this particular policy emphasizes on all universities. So there is a question, how the national law school, because it says all stand-alone university has to be shifted to the multidisciplinary university. Means law schools, like 22 law schools are there in India, they also shift to multidisciplinary university according to the policy. Just last point which I have said, and I think Professor is here, Rajkumar is here, and Justice Pasayar. If you look into the new education policy, it clearly in one of the paragraph 18 or I think paragraph which deals with the higher education in the second part, says the legal education and medical education has been left to the medical MCI and then for Bar Council of India. So legal education has been not completely covered under the new education policy, but only one paragraph is there on legal education. So I feel that sir will be the right person how the legal education will be safe coming. With these issues, the last point, if I conclude, I can say this new education policy is flexible, no hard separation, multidisciplinary, conceptual learning, regular formative assessment for learning, respect for diversity, and respect for the local context. It goes on. There are many things are there. There are the salient policy. I'm sure that today's discussion on this particular topic give us better understanding regarding the persons who are there. They are the policy makers on the Justice Sujeet Pasayar, Professor Sujeet Kumar ji, and so they are implementing, and we will learn how. So all these people, all these are like listeners. I suggest maybe chancellors have also joined. Kindly take note of this particular and see that suggestions which are going to be offered soon by the speakers. With this, I welcome I welcome all my faculty, Dr. Hardy, Thank you very much. Once again, sir. This way. Over.
Thank you, sir, for setting the right tone for further discussions on the theme of the webinar. Moving further, it is a great privilege and immense pleasure that Honorable Dr. Justice Arijit Pasayat, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, is present amongst us, one of the most outstanding judges of his times. Lordship, presently the Vice Chairman of the Special Investigation Team on Black Money, began his career in litigation in 1968 and practiced before the Orissa High Court in taxation and constitutional matters. Lordship simultaneously pursued the examination of chartered accountant and completed the mandatory articleship and also passed the intermediate chartered accountancy examination. Lordship was appointed as an additional judge in the Orissa High Court in March 1989 and was later appointed as the Chief Justice of the Kerala High Court in September 1999. Lordship was subsequently appointed as the Chief Justice of Delhi High Court in May 2000. Lordship was elevated as a judge of the Supreme Court of India in October 2001 and retired in May 2009 after delivering more than 2,500 reported judgments, which is a world record for all the Supreme Courts across the globe. Post-retirement, Lordship headed the first competition appellate body and authority for advance rulings. Lordship was awarded doctorate in law by Utkal University, Bhubaneswar, and degree of LLD by Fakir Mohan University, Balasore. Lordship was the main architect behind introduction of 5-year law course in Odisha and was judge in charge of legal education in Odisha. During his tenure in the Supreme Court, Lordship rendered several landmark verdicts on various branches of law. Among the most notable of his decisions, Lordship was the part of a constitutional bench of the Supreme Court which decided upon the constitutional validity of the reservation to other backward classes in national level institutions such as the IIT and IIMs. I now invite Honorable Dr. Justice Arijit Pasayat to make a special address to the gathering.
Morning, everybody. I hope all of you are safe, healthy during these trying times. I was really surprised when Manoj asked me to speak to you on the national education policy. I told him that I am not an academician. Why are you asking me? He said, no, we would like to know what a common man like you thinks of the national education policy. I said, all right, I will tell you a common man's perspective of the education policy. First thing which came to my mind was, what is really education? It is said that इंसान को जिंदा रहने के लिए रोटी, कपड़ा और मकान चाहिए. But I add that उसके साथ शिक्षा भी चाहिए. Education becomes important for the welfare of the human being. The constitution making authorities recognized this need, and that is why the Constitution 86th Amendment Act 2002 inserted Article 31A in the Constitution to provide free and compulsory education for all children within a particular group, of course, with the state's concurrence. Education is the most potent mechanism for the advancement of human beings. It enlarges, enriches, and improves the individual's image of the future. Education emancipates the human beings and leads to liberation from ignorance. Education is a constant process of development of innate powers of man, which are natural, harmonious, and progressive. It is said in the 21st century, a nation's ability to convert knowledge into wealth and social good through the process of innovation is going to determine its future. The new education policy approved by the Union Cabinet aims at making India a global knowledge superpower. One of the stated aims of the policy is to install a deep-rooted pride in being Indian, not only in thought, but also in spirit, intellect, and deeds, as well as to develop knowledge, skills, values, and dispositions that support responsible commitment to human rights, sustainable development, and living and global well-being. It aims at light but tight regulation by a single regulator for higher education, as well as increased access, equity, and inclusion. It lays down several factors, and it says that it aims to become multidisciplinary institutions, each of which will aim to have particular number of students. Single stream higher education institutions will be phased out over time, and all will move towards becoming institutional multidisciplinary. The system of affiliate colleges will be gradually phased out in 15 years. The education policy lays particular emphasis on the development of the creative potential of each individual. It is based on the principle that education must develop not only cognitive capacities, both the fundamental capacities of literacy and numeracy, and higher order cognitive capacities such as critical thinking and problem solving, but also social, ethical, and emotional capacities and dispositions. The purpose of education system seems to be to develop good human beings capable of rational thought and action, possessing compassion and empathy, courage and resilience, scientific temper, and creative imagination with sound ethical moorings and values. Well, if you are a human being and you do not have the capacity of creating good human beings, then probably your existence on the earth will be of no consequence. Now, today, because we are speaking from the Indian Law Institute, I will speak mostly about the development of legal education. Over the years, the profession of law has been unfortunately the figures of satire and caricature at the hands of various authors right from the ancient days. It has to be remembered that as lawyers, judges, students, and teachers of law, we are all partners in a great adventure, that is the adventure of administrating justice. Lawyers and judges are really trustees for the litigants who come to the courts either for vindication of their constitutional rights, private rights, or civil rights, and therefore the task has to be approached with deep consciousness of this fact and with a sense of responsibility. Today, the task of judges, lawyers, law students, and teachers have become very different from what it was earlier days, because then the emphasis was on private rights. Today, in the changed society, the emphasis is on constitutional rights, on public rights, on rights which have been conferred upon the weaker and disadvantaged sections of the society. What was taught to me during my college days has today become almost obsolete so far as the practice of law is concerned. Law has to keep pace and has kept pace throughout the ages with the changing needs of the society, and it is therefore useful for both a lawyer who presents his client's case as also a judge who decides that case to know how legal concepts have grown, how they have been shaped, how they have been changed, and how old concepts have given place to new ones. This important aspect has to be kept in view by those who study law and those who teach them. One of the reasons for the incompetence of so many lawyers in the incredible and ever increasing complexity of law The legal profession requires a capacity for hard work far above the ordinary. Certain ideals, values which open a larger meaning to human existence will always be beyond the pale of law. And that is why a lawyer has to be well versed in other subjects if he desires to aim at excellence. It is a matter of great concern that legal education has not received the attention it deserves. The Law Commission on Reforms of Judicial Administration had noted that there is a mushroom growth of law colleges with very hard hitting words. A critic had said that lawyers coming out from the law colleges are half-baked lawyers, left loose upon society as drones and parasites. Today, unfortunately, there is a big gap between what the lawyers are expected to do in certain areas and what actually is done. The basic difference can be traced to the inadequate legal education and entry of unqualified, ill-equipped lawyers into the profession. Therefore, today the need for focusing on the excellence of legal education has become more important. Fortunately, in the last 2 decades, legal education has deserved the importance and the recognition it warranted deserved. Now let us look as how law as stream of higher education stands in this context. Law is an important social tool as well for change, for justice, for social functioning and coherence, and so on. However, the influence and consequence of law upon people's life differ on the basis of so many factors as well. The privilege or lack of it in terms of caste, class, sex, social, sexual orientation, religion, and so on. Despite the fact that law in theory does not discriminate, it is extremely important to ensure that legal education absolutely abides by inclusion and that no one for no reason is deprived of an opportunity to learn and pursue law, especially for the reason that law is not merely a discipline but also a major development of how the society functions. Looking at the trajectory, Indian legal education has a history that has been traced back to the Vedic era. Moreover, the advent of more modern legal education in India came with the British, the establishment of modern courts and professional legal practice and so on. Now, the British legal system was designed in such institutional manner that it made formalization of legal education necessary also. At this point, reform in legal education was driven by the need to create a college tutorial setup to impart legal education. Here it becomes technically possible for anyone aspiring to pursue law to do so indeed. However, the practical aspect of access has been impeded by several aspects of social circumstances which need to be addressed. And the national legal policy has tried to address some of these aspects, though not very elaborately, because it's a part of the higher education that has been considered. Law has to be conceptualized in its social relevance rather than merely as numerous jargons and technicalities to be manipulated to achieve desired outcomes. Well, when I'm speaking of legal education, I'm reminded of what a great judge of United States, none other than Sir Justice Felix Frankfurter, had stated about 2 centuries ago. A young schoolboy named Paul Closchen, about 12 years old, wrote to Justice Frankfurter. He was living in the city of Alexandria, opposite to the Washington, D.C., where the Supreme Court of the United States is situated on the other bank of River Potomac. He wrote to Justice Frankfurter that he had a great desire to go in for law and saw his advice how he should prepare and equip himself for the study of law. Well, that was said about 2 centuries ago, but what Justice Frankfurter had written is relevant today also. He wrote, "My dear Paul," I'm reading the whole letter. "My dear Paul, no one can be truly competent lawyer unless he is a truly cultivated man. If I were you, I would forget all about any technical preparation for the law. The best way to prepare for the law is to come to the study of the law as a well-read person. Thus alone can one acquire the capacity to use the English language on paper and in speech and with the habits of clear thinking, which only a truly liberal education can give. No less important for a lawyer is the cultivation of the imaginative faculties by reading poetry, seeing great paintings in the original or in easily available reproductions, and listening to great music. Stock your mind with a deposit of much good reading and widen and deepen your feelings by experiencing vicariously as much as possible the wonderful mysteries of the universe and forget all about your future career." Justice Frankfurter wrote this letter several decades ago. Today, even something more is necessary for making of a competent lawyer or a competent judge. That is the knowledge of business, commerce, and something of economics, of socio-economic problems, of political philosophies. You must have knowledge of bookkeeping and accounts. You must be acquainted with various activities of life, which someday or other would come to a court of law. Because today, legislation regulates almost every branch and activity of life. And where there is legislation, there must necessarily be litigation. There can be no excellence in law without excellence in lawyers. Justice Warren Burger of the United States expressed his belief that about one half of the America's practicing lawyers are not adequately qualified to represent their clients. And he added that the incompetence of lawyers is one of the major reasons of the delay in courts. The Chief Justice further stated that some United States lawyers do not even know how to ask a question in court. Others subject to everything he said, giving the example of a lawyer who explained, "Oh, that is a leading question," when a witness was asked, "Is your name Mr. Goldman?" Today, I will end with a very interesting episode which happened in a court of law, which, of course, was said in a lighter vein. In a court of law, a senior lawyer was addressing the lawyer appearing the other side as Mr. Necessity. While this went on for some time, the presiding judge reminded the lawyer that the name of the counsel was not Mr. Necessity but was something else. The senior lawyer politely said, "Your Honor, I know his name, but I am only repeating the saying that necessity knows no law," and reminding him that he does not know law. I am very sure that today's students of law in various law colleges will never be addressed as Mr. Necessity when they appear in court. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to be on this.
Thank you, Lordship, for enlightening us and very detailed presentation on the new education policy and also the other aspects you have covered. And we are really very happy, and I look forward to receive you. If it's a written there, we'll take it and we'll try to see that become part of journal or other even in the newsletter. Nivedita, so I request you, like Professor Nirmal Chakravarti is also there with the Vice Chancellor of NUJS. You
Yes,
welcome
sir.
him and sir,
Yes.
okay, and then you invite the next speaker. Go ahead,
Yes,
please.
yes, sir. So I thank you, Your Lordship, for gracing this event with your presence and for giving us a new perspective to today's theme. Before moving further, I would like to welcome Professor N.K. Chakrabarti, Vice Chancellor of the National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata. Sir is an alumnus of the Calcutta University. Sir joined the West Bengal Education Service as an Assistant Professor of Law in 1985. Sir taught at the Hooghly Mohsen College from July 1985 until 1996. Sir obtained his PhD from the University of Burdwan in Criminal Justice Penology in 1992. Sir then joined the Calcutta University's Faculty of Law, where he was appointed a senior lecturer and then a reader. Sir was promoted to professor in 2007. In 2009, Sir took charge as the director of KIIT Law School in Bhubaneswar. Sir has published 7 books, over 50 research papers, and presented papers in World Criminology Congress, etc. In 2011, Sir participated in the American Correctional Association Congress at Florida, and Sir has also been associated with various research projects. We welcome you, Sir.
Sir will also make a presentation after Rajkumar. So you continue, invite Professor. Sir, you want to say something? And I request you, Nivedita, to invite Professor Mitra. And I have requested Sir to share his view on the new education policy. Professor Chakrabarti Sir will come after Rajkumar. So you can
Okay,
invite. You can invite Professor Mitra, Sir.
Okay, sir. Okay. So moving further, now I would like to invite our next speaker for the day, Professor Dr. N.L. Mitra, former Vice Chancellor, National Law School, Bangalore, NLU Jodhpur, and Chancellor, KIIT University, Bhubaneswar. Professor Mitra has been instrumental in establishing some other national law universities also in various states, including Orissa. Sir is a member of the Governing Council and Executive Council of NLU Orissa. Sir is a life member of Indian Institute of Public Administration and Indian Law Institute, former member of the Executive Committee of Commonwealth Legal Education Association, and former invitee to the American Law Deans Association and American Bar Association. Sir is presently a member of the Legal Education Committee of the Bar Council of India and a senior partner of a leading law firm, Fox Mandel and Associates. Sir was involved in the financial sector law reform and developing a regulatory system in India. Sir was an advisor to the Reserve Bank of India, International Red Cross Society, the Competition Commission of India, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of Child Welfare, Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Commerce, and many more. Sir has also advised on public lottery regulation system and training in administrative laws for all India service officers. Sir was the chairman of the Committee on Fiscal Responsibility and Management and provided an outline draft of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Sir was also a member of Copyright Law and suggested several reforms in patent law and also advised on draft of Model Marketing Act. Sir was the chairman of the Bankruptcy Committee and recommended a strong bankruptcy law. Sir's report on reform of SEBI was the foundation of the SEBI Act amendments. As a member of the Legal Advisory Committee of SEBI from 2002 to 2005, Sir piloted several regulations for the market regulator. Sir was the member of the Banking Law Reform Committee and introduced the first draft on securitization and asset reconstruction law. Sir's research under the Harvard Institution of International Development on debt security system in India is considered as primary research by Asian Development Bank, on which new legislation has also been proposed. Sir was also the initiator of the environmental law reform and comprehensive protective system formed by the World Bank and was the member of the National Committee certified by the Ministry of Environment. Sir introduced the distinct learning in law in India with the master degree in business laws. Sir was the first Indian to establish its study center outside India in Dubai and Abu Dhabi. Sir has published more than a dozen of books and hundreds of articles in national and international grounds. I now invite Professor Dr. N.L. Mitra to address the gathering. Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
So good morning to all of you. Can I be heard? Kumar, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Loud and clear, and we can see you as well.
Okay. Seeing is not that very important, but hearing is important. I am really very amused to see that is the first time that national education policy mentioned legal education. Is earlier two incarnations of 68 and 86 never mentioned it, nor 1992. So it is the first time that legal education has been mentioned. Now, as a result of the whole scale development of higher education, legal education was never considered anywhere. I again underline anywhere. The first institution to get its LLB recognized by the UGC by sanctioning a post is in 1970. UGC did not know that LLB education has also required to be financed, because entire UGC is uncertain. Even today, UGC remains uncertain. I really thank the NEP, National Education Policy, for bringing legal education into the fold and saying that there is something called legal education. Now, NEP has mentioned legal education in three aspects. Not that it has mentioned more than in one para, but it has mentioned in three aspects. One, it has said now clearly that legal education shall not be in this regulatory framework. Earlier, this statement was never there. In spite of the Bar Council, in spite of the Advocates Act mentioning that all legal educations are of the professionals, but still UGC often indulged into legal education as and when they choose. There was no clear mention about anything. The second thing that a para, Manoj has rightly said, is specifically said about legal education, and each sentence of that para is extremely important. So it is a pregnant of thought. It is not simply a para. Each sentence is a pregnant of thought. Now there are so many ideas in each sentences. And third, this report has, I just calculated, 21 times it has said about value education. 21 times it has mentioned value education. And in the value education, twice it has explained what is the value education. And all those that they have said, these are matters of actually a dharma, or we call it as a kind of due process. And it is concerned with legal education. So I think there's a clear enunciation of legal education in all these things. Now, I become disappointed in one thing. We are looking to holistic education. And holistic education actually has been also attempted by, now I do not know how many of you have already studied the Chinese education policies of 1981. Now these same words were used at that time. Holistic, because they wanted, Chinese education wanted American education to be copied. So they had, but we have a very rich integral education system. It's called integral education system. It is given in your Vedantic philosophy, in Upanishads. 3 Upanishads actually explain this Vedantic philosophy on integral education, which is educating body, mind, and soul. The new education policy has mentioned that. New education policy has mentioned it twice. Once it is said that you require good people to be brought in education. Okay, there should be good citizen. Now, how do you make good citizen? More and more higher education more and more higher education through holistic process in Anglo-American system will make more and more exploitative system, because the knowledge domain would be absolutely uneven. So you require again a regulator. I was thinking that we had the opportunity now to actually, because the new education policy mentioned at places it has mentioned those values. At places it mentioned that education shall not remain only within the book lessons. It has to transcend. We call it transcendental education. In Vedantic philosophy, the transcendentalism is there. Now, once the mind is educated, education can make people transcend their own self and self-interest. And that is called value education. Holistic education will not automatically bring value education. Holistic education will make efficient education. Now I tell you, it is not that holistic education we started talking today. Now Manoj will be knowing that I started holistic education in Jodhpur. Manoj, you are saying that how these law schools will start. Law schools are at the present moment, they call it law universities, but they are nothing more than a law college. It is only a glorified name of a law college, not a university at all. Now, first thing that we started in Jodhpur to become a kind of new paradigm of legal education, which is holistic, not integral, is holistic only. Because in integration, I have to also include the lessons of transcendation of mind. That is the second stage, not the first stage. So those who thought that holistic education is the first stage, transcendentalism is the second stage. Now, I say it is this transcendental education has been practiced in India, even recently. Now, at least, I mean, I thought that people will go to these 2-3 institutions like Kobiguru's Shantiniketan, where lot of culture has been embedded in the education system, and Chinese, Japanese, Americans, Britishers used to visit. Even when I was a student, I was not a student of Shantiniketan. When I was a student, during that time we found lot of British professors, lot of American professors, Chinese, Japanese professors, they used to come there in Shantiniketan. Why? They wanted to know what is this experiment called integral experiment that Gurudev is trying to do. The second experiment was done in Pondicherry. Pondicherry, it is called total education, body, mind and soul. Body, mind and soul. Holistic education will address to the mind. Education will address to the lower level of mind. Mind has got 7 stages. So from mind to illuminated mind, from mind to wise mind, this is the first stage, mind to wise mind, informative mind. This is the education, the first level education. That going to educated mind or informative mind to learned mind, learned second stage of education. Now that learned mind will go to soul education. It's called transcendental education. That part is still not talked about. Actually, there are 2 or 3 words in this national education policy. 2-3 words are there, but that has not been yet formalized. So I think that now we have to cultivate integral education. Holistic education when we started in 19. I think it is on 2001. We started in Jodhpur, right, Manoj? 2001 we started, and we started not with law, not with only one law discipline. We started with science and engineering. There was a dean of science and engineering. There was a dean of technology. There was a dean of social sciences and literature. And there was a dean of law. And there was a dean of business law. Now, these deans were actually, there were 5 deans, including law dean. Now, these 5 deans we started with. Harvard really has got multidisciplinary education, because the backbone of Harvard legal education is the multidisciplinary education it has. Now, America has got a better educational style than the British system. In Britain, law is only undergraduate degree, whereas in the US, you cannot go to the law school unless you have done 4 years undergraduate studies in any subject. So you have a multidisciplinary input to make the final lawyers. Now, when we moved to 5-year law course, actually we entered into a blind lane, only 3 or 4 subjects, because Britishers, they have sociology, they have economics, and they have history. So we have copied from the British legal system here that we have these 3 or 4 subjects along with the law, and we say it's a 5-year law course. 5-year law course, therefore, was not an integral education at all, not an integrated education at all, and not holistic at all. So actually, lawyers are to come from all disciplines. Then only actually lawyers will have now learn the new values of law. Now, this holistic, therefore, is a proper emphasis given that you have to have total education. Now, if you say you are a university, there are this actually policy has distinguished between university education and college education. University education, they say, university means at least 50% must be devoted to research. At least 50% must be devoted to research. A, B, it must be multidisciplinary. That means you have the knowledge from various subjects, and then you have to have multidisciplinary knowledge, and 50% would be you have to go for research. Now in India, we do not have research. We do not have research what they solved, and we do not have multidisciplinary research. I think HIID, for the first time, they put me and TC Anand into a team, and we build up a team, eco-political, eco-legal, polito-legal, this type of researchers, blending various types of researchers. The first time, and perhaps this is the last time. Why several teams have not been built? Because we do not have holistic education. So I fully understand the implication of holistic education, and I said multidisciplinary education is the first stage. So if you are a university, 50% must be research, must be case studies, must be problem solutions. And if it is a college, it will give education, teaching. Teaching is the first thrust, but there shall be some research as well. So this is the final distinction this policy has made first. The policy, I am very fascinated by this policy because of one thing, that it understood that our affiliation system of affiliation system of any education, affiliation system has caused serious damage to education. We get this affiliation system from British education. But Britain is a small country. India is a big country. So in India, universities, because university education is costly, so universities are used as the center, and then these are called chains, like say you have food chain, so you have education chains. So you build up education chains, a mom-pop shop in education, almost now to tahsils. Now these are called tentacles of education through which actually Indians are brought into the education fold at a very cheap cost. So you had 2 things. One, they have to be brought inside, and 2, it has to be a cheap cost. So we have a mom-pop shop thing like that, a kind of a technology. We do not have university technology yet. So this is now for the first time they say we have to now distinguish between these two, and this affiliated institutions, they must be either they have the in front of them what is their goal, what do they do? A, they can merge with the university, become university college, merge with university, so constituent college of the university. B, they can become big with a big investment. Now if you read this Chinese education policy of 1881, you will find that China has done same thing. Big universities were created, big colleges were created. They had 2,500, 2,600 affiliated colleges and about 800 universities at that time. We at the present only law program has got 1,600 affiliated colleges, 1,600 and 400 universities. So it is only for legal education. Now, they actually at that time made those small things merge together. So merger, acquisition, takeover. These are the techniques that one has to follow. So you merge the small mom pop shop into one to make a cluster, and you give your own degree. Make a cluster, give your own degree. But you shall not be an affiliated system of a university, right? So they say this, you become big by these processes and invest more, and then you survive. The next thing that, okay, if you cannot do that, then you have number one, become university, part of the university. So university will take a chunk of those colleges into the colleges of university as the system of the university schools. The second, they become big. Either one has to become big by merger, acquisition, takeover, or they form a cluster. These are the two things. One, small units can make a cluster, big cluster, and this cluster will then decide their program, and then cluster will give the degree, cluster will give education, teaching, cluster will give the degree. Okay, the third. Now, big cluster, and then finally, if you cannot do anything, now I anticipate that actually when I see the legal system, I see at least 400 to 500 affiliated schools, affiliated colleges. They have to close down. There is no way out. There is no clustering possible. So because it was all haphazard done, now it is going to be systematic. When you look at systematic, so you have that problem we have now at the present moment. Also, we have the problem that big mall or mom pop shop, similarly big clusters, or you have affiliation systems of small units who distribute poverty of education. They do not distribute education. So I think that this also is a very fascinating debate, that should we have our economic system, should we have this, is it possible to make a clustering system, or to make a big colleges, or to make them part of the university if the university is not there in the locality? Now, college cannot be there. So if these three cannot take place, now should we wind up the entire small units of education, or we have to think about it? Your time starts down as soon as you start. It says by 2030, you have first period of 2030, 2035, 2040. There are the three figure years given. 2040 is given for all faculty universities to become multi-faculty universities. 2040. 2035, big clusters and big conglomerations and big units to have their own degrees and move out. And 2030, you have universities to monitor the systems and take over some and guide the others to actually coagulate. Now, these are the first period, second period, third period, 30, 35, and 40. Now, why I failed multidisciplinary? People may ask me, Manoj can ask me, why did you fail? So is it that this holistic education will fail? So why I failed? I failed because country was not ready. So as soon as I left, it is a legal education people, those who are law teachers, they actually are not committed to multidisciplinary education. Multidisciplinary education is shelved by the law teachers themselves. I find this in IIT Kharagpur. In IIT Kharagpur, when we started that, it's a special type of, institution. And it is in technology. Technology has to be strong. But today, what is the position? Law people in one side, and there are one or two in the technology side. That's it. There is no mixture. There is no coagulation. There is no in-thing. There is no question of transcendentalism. Now, this is called transcendental point. This transcendental knowledge is not there. That I take your knowledge, you take my knowledge, and then we leave our self-interest. It is now self-interest. I am becoming a professor. I will be the head. I will be this. I will be dean. I will be this. I will be that. Not I and you together we make we. We are stronger than I. We are stronger than you. Now this is not done. And this is exactly what happens in other universities also. If you go to even Oxford, you go to Oxford today is suffering from this psychosis. Oxford itself says. Now, if we have to transcend that, then we have to see the educational disciplines also moving in different. Now, I failed because of this, because I could not change our character, because our education system was not like that. As I left, people say, no, there is no money. UGC is not giving that money, this money, that money. As if the money is the criteria, then only we will start. We will not start. We will not do that. And that IIT Kharagpur is the example. Now, you see that if we have to have multidisciplinary education, now all institutions are now saying these are called knowledge universities. They have to be multidisciplinary, because problem solution, when the problem comes, problem doesn't say I have a problem in economics, please solve me through economics. It is not solved. Economics, sociology, political science, it may be physics, it may be mathematics, quantitative mathematics, it may be statistics. So unless you have the idea of where to get the problem solutions, how, you will not be able to solve. So you have a panoramic, not pandemic, panoramic view of education knowledge. This panoramic view of education knowledge, unless you are not a university. University must have the universe of knowledge. But that doesn't mean that university cannot have specialized in some ways. Say MIT. MIT is world over known for technology, but MIT is a superior university in economics. Its economics department is very, very good. So MIT. Similarly, Harvard. If you say Harvard is good in political science, Harvard is as well good in law. So political science, all social sciences are good in Harvard. But it doesn't mean that Harvard physicists have not got Nobel Prize. Harvard have got Nobel Prize. Harvard chemistry department had Nobel Prizes. So you think that these are multidisciplinary, yet there may be a thrust. In our system, what happens? Now there is a national law school, the second national school comes, they will follow the first national school. All are following the same thing. They do not have any separate part. As if that we have only BA LLB is our criteria. Somebody will not have BSc, somebody will not have BTech LLB. Somebody will not have medicine and doctorate. Now, if there is a problem of the professional ethics in medicine, it is really very difficult for law people to actually identify the value on which the ethics depends. Because law education has nothing to do with philosophy at the present moment. Present moment, we do not, as a lawyer, we do not study philosophy at all. We do not study philosophy, we do not study psychology. Therefore, we must have, and when we have this, all these varieties of education, students must have the they must have the ability to move. They must have the ability to move. This 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. Now, somebody said it is a solution of the problem of dropouts. I don't think that is a solution to the problem of dropout. I don't think, I refuse to believe that. Because if there is a dropout, it means dropout. It is a procedure for movement from one to the other. I may come to you to learn 2 lessons from you, 4 lessons from him, 3 lessons from that, 5 lessons from him to make me a perfect lawyer. Now, this movement from one to the other at the present moment in the rigid system is not possible. Suppose I think that I have to go to ILI, and from ILI, Manoj is an expert in human right. I will take Manoj's 4 credit course. I will take 4 credit from him in this paper, in that paper, in that paper. I will not be spared from National School Bangalore and go there and learn that and come back. Because every time I'll be shown as a dropped candidate. I'm not dropped. Now, why people drop? People drop because they have some job. So they drop now, take the job, do some job, again come back, have some earn and learn. Money earn and money learn together. It goes earning and learning together. Second, I have movement from course to course. I go for course to course and I take credit from here, credit from there. I want public policy. I go to global and trained by Rajkumar, and then come back. Again, I become my students here. So my going forward to and fro, this is possible only if I am released. Now, 1 year, 2 year certificate course, diploma course, and degree course based upon credit system. If I have so many credit, I get a degree. So many credit, I get a diploma. So many credit, I get a certificate. Now, this means that I am as a consumer of education. Indian system of integral yogic system doesn't use student as a customer. But holistic education takes student as a customer. So if you take universities of US, they will say who is the customer. It is student specific, student centric education. Now, student centric, if it is not, then what will happen is there is a gap between students' aspiration and legal education and any education. So there will be a gap. Now, this gap has to be bridged. Now, this gap can be bridged provided you have this comfortable movement from one area to the other area. Now if 1600 affiliated colleges, Bar Council has to now see that they are reorganized, restructured. It says restructuring. Who will do that? Monitoring shall be done by the universities. Universities shall oversee the restructuring. University shall guide. Because if it is a clustering, it requires geographical identification of the cluster. If it is some have the potential of becoming very big, then that it shall be a kind of autonomous institution by itself. Now, if some are close to the university, they can become universities college. Now, this multidisciplinary, when they move out, cluster must not be one cluster. 1600 law schools, if I have to cluster them, they should not be only teaching LLB. They have to teach BA, they have to teach BCom, they have to say BSc, they have to say BBA, and interchange. Now, professional education and general education must have a free movement. Free movement. Access must be free. So I have to go take economics, I may take to physics, I may take to law, I may take to forensic science, and then make myself as a lawyer. I decide, as a consumer, I decide what I am to learn. Not you decide that I have to learn like this. This is a baggage system. Our education system is a baggage system. First time that you are saying, no, it is not a baggage system. Let us have this type of movement so that it is flexible. It is according to use, according to the economic moorings. Now, today, I think I will take a human right. Tomorrow, I find that there is a human right, there is a choke. I cannot get a job. I go to, say, environment. Now, next day, I think environment is getting choked. I may get in criminal law. So I may vary from movement to movement and retrain myself. That's why I come back to the university, again retrain. I have not taken criminology. I now can train myself in a criminology and go to the law court and criminal court. Now, one thing which I take a bit seriously is that para 2.4, one para that is mentioned, which is devoted to legal education, is completely, I think, completely taken on a notion that law is for a lawyer. Legal education is for a lawyer. So this is number one. Number two, law is for litigation management. Law only litigates and litigation manages. Law doesn't do that, only this. Now, if you look at the statistics, you will find that in India, now Mark Galenter once asked me, why in India cases are so low? Number of cases are so low, very low. Compared to US or Japan, number of cases are very low. He said, how this big profession will survive? Now we have 1.25 million lawyers. 1.25 million lawyers, they have to get at least 1 lakh of rupees per month. How many cases you have to file per year? It will come to about 9 to 10 crores. Our filing today is only 1.6 or 1.7 crore per year. So what we do is we multiply that, we delay the decision. If I delay the decision, now 1.5 will become 9. So we delay, mathematically we delay the decision to make by earning. Now this is it this system, ethical system? Now this is what is going on. But if we look at that, we have to think that law is not simply for litigation. Now if you see, read sentence 1, it says that it has to be globally competitive. Which knowledge, legal knowledge, has to be globally competitive? It is only WTO driven law knowledge must be globally competitive. Which law requires to be competitive? Is import, export, international finance, when there is a cross-border transaction, then that law and solution of that case requires actually global competition. We require global competition here. But criminal case, who will say that criminal case, my criminal case will be global competition? Now we have gradation of cases. In India, we do not have gradation of cases also. Now everyone reads everything. That means everyone reads nothing at the end. So we understand that now these law schools have to reframe themselves, rephrase themselves, and this has to be governed by the law universities. Now I raise one question: who will finance that? We have already suffered, law education has already suffered in the hand of UGC, severely suffered. Are we going to suffer again? Because law education is not in HECI. So it is not in NHERC. So if law education is not here, how can it get grant from HEGC? Can it get grant from HEGC? So as colleges, schools, these were not getting grants, legal education did not get grant, and if UGC used to give 20 professors in a university, university used to give all 20 professors in other disciplines, law did not get anyone. You can verify how many professors. Now UGC has given new professors, UGC has given to law school, Delhi Law School, in the last 10 years. Just go and get it. You will understand that UGC gives new posts, but it goes to all other disciplines excepting law. Now, are we going to suffer again due to that? Because they are financial, got different finance. Their financial system is different. So medical commission, their national medical commission will have Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. They are the financial supporter. Whereas in case of law and justice is not the financial law. So it goes to UGC. So are we confusing that at one point of time we say you are liberal education and another point of time you are a professional education? This actually policy has clearly said you are a professional education, nothing short of it. You are a professional education and professional education only. In case, now how come HEGC will give fund? Now in that case, ministerial. Now always you find the central government pie to the legal education is the last. Central government doesn't support legal education. Now, am I eating up all of your time? Manoj has left.
So if you conclude in 5 minutes, that will be good, sir. Because 2-3 more speakers are there, sir.
Oh, Manoj, you should remind me. You know that
No,
my switch is in my leg.
So
once I start.
But it was very interesting, sir. Like, no, so that is the reason I did not say anything. But 5 minutes, sir, you conclude so we can. Rajkumar, Sujeet ji, and Professor Chakravarti, all three speakers are there.
Anyway, I will in 1 minute to close. Our legal education regulators, the first challenge is the 1600 affiliated colleges. What do we do with them? Can we say that we will keep them under a different structure? We cannot say that. The space is not there. In the policy, space is not there. Anyway, I said, but it is easy for national law universities to move out to the multidisciplinary. It is not difficult. Very easy. I have Nalsar in front of me and I just examined. So Nalsar can anytime move to multidisciplinary education. And in fact, Nalsar did that. They asked me, I said, okay, why don't you start management? Let us start management. So it is easy that you can move to multidisciplinary, provided you intend to do that, because it is a challenge. It is a great challenge. Fund is your first challenge. Who will pay for? Who is going to pay? UGC has not paid legal education for long. Bar Council is not a funding agency. Law Ministry of Law and Justice is not our nodal agency. So we are confused. Who will take care of us? Having said that, I said this education policy has a very meaningful education policy, but now for law education, we must have a similar exercise now. It must start now to make a policy paper. Thank you.
Nivedita, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful and elaborate address. Now, I would like to invite our next speaker for the day, Dr. Sujeet Kumar, Member of Parliament who represents Orissa in the Rajya Sabha. Sir is a trained engineer, lawyer, and a policy maker. Sir has also served at senior policy planning positions with Government of Orissa as the advisor in the rank of Chief Secretary to the Special Development Council of the Government of Orissa and Special Secretary of the Orissa State Planning Board. Sir completed his Bachelor of Engineering from Veer Surendra Sai University of Technology and Bachelor of Laws from Sambalpur University. Sir started his career as a software engineer with Infosys Technologies Limited and later shifted to the development sector and worked with the United Nations Development Programme, managing its ICT for development projects in Orissa, working to bring digital technology to the remote regions of the state. Sir received the prestigious inaugural Scholarship for Social Entrepreneurship to study MBA at Oxford University. After completing his MBA, Sir joined the World Economic Forum at Geneva as a Global Leadership Fellow. Sir left World Economic Forum to study Master in Public Administration at the Harvard University. Sir relocated to India in 2011 and founded a social enterprise, Kalinga Kusum Foundation, and a business legal consulting firm, Lex Mantra. Currently, Sir serves as an advisor, mentor in these two entities, providing them with strategic direction and guidance. Sir has promoted a startup culture and ecosystem in Orissa by helping foster business spirit amongst the youth, especially women, for which he engaged, trained, and even mentor students and entrepreneurs in the areas of ideation, business strategy, startup laws, and even business finance. Sir received the prestigious Youth Inspiration Award of 2017 for his innovative work as a policy maker, legal entrepreneur, and for his cutting edge work at the interface of law, technology, development, and public policy. Recently, Sir was also nominated as the member of the Consultative Committee in the Ministry of External Affairs. I now invite Dr. Sujeet Kumarji to address the gathering.
Thank you, Nivedita ji. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Hello? Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. At the outset, let me thank Professor Sinha for inviting me to be part of this panel on new education policy. I'm actually the odd one here for two reasons. One is I'm the lone politician here amongst legal luminaries and doyens of Indian academia. And secondly, I'm the only one here among the speakers or among the panelists without a PhD or without a doctorate. So Nivedita ji, I need to correct you. I'm not Dr. Sujeet Kumar. I'm just Sujeet Kumar without a doctorate yet. And I noticed that all the other co-panelists have a doctorate and PhD. It's truly humbling and an honor to be part of this panel with Dr. Justice Pasayat, who I have grown up admiring as a lawyer and then as an accomplished and erudite judge of the Supreme Court, and Professor Rajkumar, Professor Mitra, Professor Chakravarti, Professor Sinha. So it's a real honor to be here amongst all of you. I would like to redefine the title of today's webinar by adding a question mark at the end of the title. So right steps towards inclusive higher education. There was it was a statement, and I'm taking the liberty to put a question mark. Are we truly inclusive? Is this policy truly inclusive, or there is yet more to be done to make it more inclusive and more accessible and more affordable? But let me compliment the government of the day for making this landmark policy truly consultative, truly participative, and truly inclusive. I'm told that over 2 lakh suggestions were received by the government of India, by the then Ministry of HRD and now the Ministry of Education. So at least in that respect, the formulation of this policy has been in the right step and has been truly inclusive. I would definitely concede that the policy is very forward-looking. It's landmark policy. It's futuristic, and in many respects, it is conducive to the needs of the 21st century India. It is also drafted to rebuild India into a knowledge superpower by bringing in radical and transformative changes in the policy ecosystem. And by creating a system which is deep rooted in Indian ethos, Indian culture, Indian heritage, whatever that one might interpret to be. As far as I'm concerned, I come from the development background. So for me, the touchstone of this policy is to align it with the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And here I must add that there are at least 4 goals of the SDG. Goal 6, which talks about quality education. Goal 4, which talks about quality education. Goal 6 which talks about gender equality, goal 8, which talks about creating opportunities for our youth, and goal 10, which talks about reducing inequalities in our society. So the success of the NEP 2020 would be whether it's in alignment with SDG 2030. Now, it would not be out of place to give two facts here, which are very, very contextual. First is, we are living in very unprecedented times. We are all in the midst of a global pandemic, coronavirus. So schools and colleges, since we are talking about education, we all know that schools and colleges are not functioning, physically at least. So everyone has, every school, every college, every student has adopted online learning. So if I were to look at the positive side of this crisis, it has made us more comfortable with technology. But to be comfortable with technology, one has to have technology in the first place. Can we say this? For a large section of our students and our youth living in rural India, I had the opportunity to ask a 0-hour question during the monsoon session of the issue which has perturbed and agitated people of my district. The government entity came out with a guideline in July of this year, intending to stop cellular services from Kalahandi district and other districts of Odisha, citing revenue loss and commercial non-viability. Now, can education, can development be hostage to commercial considerations? Should education be only about profit and loss? So my strong objection in the House, on the one hand, Honorable Prime Minister talks about digital India, e-Kranti, digital education. And on the other hand, BSNL, which is government body, is planning to deprive a large section of my people, or for that matter, any part of rural India, of digital technology. How can we think of digital divide, the divide between the gap between the haves and the have-nots? How can we talk about leveraging technology for higher education when people in at least 30% of panchayats would be deprived of basic cellular services if BSNL has its way? Forget about Jio, forget about Airtel and Vodafone. BSNL. So that is the first context. And the second context is about not a single university in India, not a single institute of higher learning being in the top 100 ranking. Now, you know, it's partly objective and partly subjective. You know, I do not, myself personally speaking, I do not give much importance to these rankings, because, you know, rankings, global ranking is not an index of what we are and what we are capable of. But definitely there is some food for thought here.
विंदर जी आवाज नहीं आ रही है?
Sir, I think some problem is there at sir's end. Actually, I'm not. ना तो आवाज आ रही है ना वीडियो आ रहा है सर, तो इंटरनेट का प्रॉब्लम है सर उनके एंड पे, वो मुझे दिख रहा है यहाँ से।
Hello. Hello.
Yes sir.
Is it clear now?
Yes sir, now it is clear.
Okay. What was the last point? One could hear me?
Yes sir, yes sir. Nivedita, can you repeat what's the level, like, we got interrupted?
Sir, even I don't know, sir. I also got disconnected actually.
And also disconnected point he want to know. Why? I think, sir, you were speaking about the inclusiveness, like internet, and then like Geo, Vodafone. That was the point.
Oh, that was okay. I am actually in hinterland Odisha in the midst of an election, in the midst of a by-election campaign. So I'm having some technology challenges here, and precisely the point I was making.
This is the real challenge, sir. That is it, like.
So this is precisely the point I was making. So yeah, no, I was talking about the context. The context of technology, leveraging technology for higher education or for making education inclusive. And I am very agitated with the move of BSNL to deprive rural India of cellular services, citing commercial non-viability. And I raised this very, very strongly in the floor of the House during the monsoon session. And the second point the second context I brought up was regarding not a single university or institute of higher learning in India being in the top 100 ranking. Not that I attach too much of importance to this ranking, because these rankings, in my view, personally speaking, are not an index of what we are capable of and what we are or what we are potentially going to be. But nevertheless, it provides us some food for thought. Why are we not in the top 100 ranking? And this is where Professor Mitra was, I think, pointing out about Indian universities, Indian higher education not focusing on research, not focusing on multidisciplinary research, not focusing on applied learning. While we celebrate this new education policy in large respect, it's because it has taken care of some of the deficiencies in the current education format. The deficiency being, about a very fragmented higher educational system where we have over 50,000 colleges. The deficiency being about our education being reduced to an assembly line, churning out students in thousands and hundreds of thousands without any focus on applied learning or without any focus on integral education or transcendental education, what Professor Mitra so brilliantly outlined. Education has become an assembly line rather than becoming, a system to educate body, mind, and soul, what he so brilliantly pointed out. Lack of higher education. Only a small fraction of our youth are able to afford higher education because of socioeconomic and financial reasons. We spend only 3.6% of our GDP on education as on date. I do concede that as a developing nation, we have competing priorities, we have competing interests. We have to spend on our defense needs, we have to spend on health, we have to spend on infrastructure, we have to spend on our welfare schemes. But 3.6% is completely inadequate, is wholly inadequate. And it is heartening to point out that most of these deficiencies have been corrected in the new NEP 2020. The first being the intent to spend 6% of our GDP on education. And that will leave a substantial chunk on higher education as well. That will lead to optimal spend of our exchequer and national resources on a very, very critical issue of education. Now, Justice Pasait was he was quoting Justice Frankfurter, that no one can truly be a lawyer unless one is a cultivated person. And he spoke about this in a different context, in the context of education of law, in the context of the legal field, in the context of a different era, many decades ago. But I can say the same thing today in the context of education in general in India. Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation, when asked what education should be, amongst other things, had said that, my countrymen should develop harmony, should develop rhythm. And the only way to develop harmony and rhythm is to give them the education of music. I think it was Professor Pasait who spoke of liberal arts, he spoke of music, he spoke of philosophy being part of an educated and cultivated mind. And I'm heartened, particularly heartened, because this aspect of education has been to a great degree taken care of in the NEP 2020. The focus on multidisciplinary learning, whether we call it integral education, whether we call it transcendental education, that has been largely taken care of. Access to education through technology is being talked about, but I'm not very sure. I truly doubt whether we would be able to leverage technology.
Then your education, you have got an iPad.
Whether we would be able to leverage technology to provide to our masses. Because even though the intent is, I think, noble, as I have given an example, there is a large gap between the intent and the reality, at least in rural India. And aspect of NEP 2020 which really gladdens my soul is the flexibility, the opportunity to have multiple entry and exit, the opportunity to depart from a silo mentality, the opportunity to take multiple credits, and the opportunity to study multiple subjects without being confined to a narrow discipline. So in totality, the NEP 2020 is a forward-looking policy with a lot of potential, but I think there are some improvements. The biggest need is to provide some clarity regarding the time-bound nature of the implementation, because the intent might be great. And as a politician, I know, we, the political class, we have the best of intention, but the problem is when the rubber hits the road. So I would like to urge the government to bring some time-bound clarity on the implementation aspect. The second grouse I have is that the NEP 2020 does not at all talk of regional history. As an Odia, as a person living in Odisha, I know about the battles of Panipat, but I hardly know about the great kings of Kalinga. I do not know about King Khanavala, or for that matter, I do not know about King Martanda Verma from Travancore. I do not know about the Iams of the Northeast. I really hope that our education system, first and foremost, should provide us knowledge, wisdom prevailing in our own community, prevailing in our own society. I might know about birds and flora and fauna from England, but I can barely recognize a bird in my own backyard. Isn't this something to be ashamed of? Isn't this something which they care of? And finally, I think, though there has been a wider consultation, I would have really wanted the NEP 2020 to involve the states in its implementation in the coming years, because education is a concurrent subject. Here, I do not want to play in politics, but at least last I checked, government of Odisha was not consulted as to the implementation aspect of the policy. So this is where I think the policy needs to bring in far more wider consultations. I commended the government at the beginning for making the policy consultation more inclusive and participatory, but I think the states were not involved in the implementation aspect of the policy. And it is worthwhile to know that government of Odisha has already started with many of the benevolent aspects of the policy, as I'll give an example, reducing school bags. The policy talks of 10 days being bagless days for school children. And we have already implemented this in a district in Odisha on a pilot basis. The policy talks of education in one's own mother tongue. Odisha is one state where we have multilingual dictionaries for 13 tribal dialects. So I think the policy has the right intent, and I really hope that implementation will be as forward-looking and as benevolent as the policy document. Thank you again, Professor Sinha, and it was really very illuminating to hear Justice Pasayat and Professor Mitra speak on the policy. It was very educative for me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Over to you, Nivedita.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your enlightening thoughts. Now I would like to invite our next speaker for the day, Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, founding Vice Chancellor of Open Jindal Global University.
Nivedita, I would like to interrupt you, and that's good enough introduction, because since we are already 1:15, let's move quickly into what we want to do so that we can take some questions. So I'm sorry to intervene. I think let's move into the theme of what we're discussing. I would like to thank the director of the Indian Law Institute, my very dear friend, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha, of course, the Indian Law Institute itself, for actually taking this effort to host today's webinar on the national education policy. I'm grateful to Honorable Dr. Justice Pasayat, of course, Dr. Mitra, and Mr. Sujeet Kumar, and Dr. Chakrabarti for their presence and their contribution in discussing today's theme, which is the national education policy. Let me begin by saying that the idea of a national education policy needs to get resonated with the larger social, economic, and political fabric of our nation. And, for at least, I must say that this particular initiative that the government of India has promoted has actually caught the imagination of a large number of people, and even critical educationists have to a large extent welcomed the national education policy. I must confess at the very beginning that I have been a very strong supporter since the publication of the national education policy, and taking into account the valid criticism of several elements of the policy itself, which I share the concerns expressed by other speakers, including Mr. Kumar, as well as Dr. Mitra and Dr. Justice Pasayat as well. I must say that this national education policy augurs a new era in Indian higher education. Now, it's an outstanding vision statement. It's also an inspiring policy document, but it also seeks a fundamental transformation of the landscape of Indian higher education. It has recognized the complexity and challenges of the higher education system with a lot of integrity and candidness that is rare when it comes to policy statements and policy documents. It has envisaged a vision for seeking substantive change with a view to harnessing the extraordinary potential of human development, particularly with regard to India's demographic dividend. We know that we are a young country and the old civilization. 850 million people in India are less than 35 years of age, when most parts of the Western world, including Eastern world, including China and Japan, will become older. India will be younger and will be younger for a longer time. That means that the demographic dividend needs to be addressed, and that there cannot be a more important policy document that will address this. Since we are technically supposed to be completing this entire session at 1:15 and we're already 1:17, I'll try to keep it as short as possible so that we can take some questions and have also Dr. Chakrabarti hear his views as well. What I'll do is, since we have covered a lot of ground with the other distinguished speakers, I'll focus on the policy itself and how we can, what we need to do towards implementing it, and what are the possible challenges that we need to address. That will be my framework of the talk. So I've identified 10 big ideas that the national education policy has promoted, and I'll quickly run through it because it's important for us to understand what, and all of them has important implications for legal education, although Technically, the legal education and medical education has been ruled out from the policy itself. One can debate about it as well, but I do think that at some point of time, as the policy evolves, there has to be space for increasing and expanding and even significantly enhancing the presence of both medical education and legal education as a part of the larger, national education policy. So, first big idea that the NEP has promoted is the idea and notions of world-class education and the pursuit of excellence. It has boldly aspired to build a world-class higher education system and has recognized that this is critical and central to the future of India and for building a knowledge society. It has talked about it at length in various parts of the report, and it's an aspirational document when it comes to aspiring to create a world-class education system. I don't see any reason why India should not aspire to do that. I mean, I studied into Mr. Kumar, I had the privilege to study in both Oxford and Harvard, and I can say, and besides Indian universities, I can say that the quality of education that we have the potential to give is no less than those institutions. But more importantly, Oxford is 800 years old, Bologna is 1,000 years old, but India had institutions such as Nalanda, Takshashila, Vallabhi, and Vikramshila over 2,000 years ago, long before Oxford and Bologna were established. And we actually ended up having those institutions multidisciplinary in nature, global in nature, strong emphasis on liberal arts, humanities, social sciences, and even STEM disciplines. So that imagination need to be brought back into our education system. So that's the first big idea. The second is quickly multidisciplinarity and liberal education. It has envisaged the creation of a liberal, multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary education ecosystem with strong emphasis on liberal arts, humanities and social sciences, along with studies in STEM and medicine. It's one of the biggest challenges that we have faced in India. In fact, many of us have lamented the steady decline in the emphasis on humanities and social sciences, and the NEP has provided an opportunity to reimagine. The third big idea is regulatory reforms. NEP has sought fundamental and substantive regulatory reforms in higher education by removing the old barriers, distinctions between the public and the private higher education sectors. It has recognized the challenges of regulation. It has tongue-in-cheek talked about the idea of Indian higher education system over-regulated and under-governed, and in that process reimagine the regulatory framework. The fourth big idea that NEP has promoted is the expansion of the higher education sector with quality and access. It has envisaged the focus in policy relating to expansion, access, equity, inclusion, and excellence, all of which are equally important goals and aspirations that need to be fulfilled simultaneously. Let me also say that this is not going to be easy. There are numerous challenges for us to achieve both quality and quantity, but as an aspirational document, it has set an important agenda on the basis of which we need to work. That's the fourth big idea. The fifth big idea that has been long talked about and has at last found a solid place in the NEP is the need for building a research ecosystem. It has emphasized research and a culture of innovation that is central to the imagination of higher education in the future, with an effort to create significant funding impetus and grants for research through the National Research Foundation, while envisaging a higher GDP investment in education. We can, of course, talk about what are its implications post-corona, what are its implications when it comes to an economic situation that does not provide that type of resources. I'll talk about it towards the end, but it has talked about a research ecosystem and higher funding, including the setting up of the National Research Foundation. That's the fifth big idea. The sixth big idea is on faculty focus. It has paved for the recruitment of outstanding faculty with a strong focus on mentoring, retention, incentives, achievements, and faculty development programs, recognizing that the faculty members are the most crucial aspect of the higher education system. The seventh aspect of the NEP essentially is about governance and leadership, something that I strongly believe. I've been arguing in favor of it for a long time. It has highlighted the importance of governance and leadership in the administration and institution building efforts, in which all aspects of the effectiveness of the institution will depend upon and indeed shaped by the ability of leadership and the effect of governance structures that need to be put in place. The next aspect of the NEP has focused on academic freedom and institutional autonomy. It has underlined the significance of academic freedom and institutional autonomy in funding, curriculum development, student admissions, faculty recruitment, with substantial freedom and academic flexibility in determining the duration of the degree program, the entry and exit aspects that other speakers talked about. The ninth aspect of the NEP is essentially something that we need to address, and NEP has talked about it, the notions of public funding and private philanthropy. It has strengthened the framework of funding with a promise of increased investment in higher education and recognizing the role of both the public and the private sector, with strong emphasis on philanthropy and the need for philanthropy to be expanded. Of course, the next aspect of NEP talks about internationalization, accreditation, digitization. It has appreciated the importance of internationalization with a view to promoting global partnerships with leading universities around the world. The government of India has been taking a number of efforts. The GYAN program is an example, but there are many more initiatives such as the Spark and all of that. All of that is also contributing to this effort. The NEP has taken accreditation and global benchmarking of universities, including ranking, seriously. It has envisaged the need for providing significant support to the digitization of higher education and for the promotion of online education and upgradation of digital infrastructure. In fact, the Swayam platform and more recent reforms initiated through the development of online and distance learning regulation is part of the effort towards creating a new digital imagination of Indian universities. In addition, the national education policy has also reimagined the regulatory architecture of the higher education system to create a comprehensive and integrated higher education commission, besides, of course, naming the HRD ministry as a Ministry of Education itself. Now, let me quickly say that, however, this is a very important aspect of what I want to say, which is that NEP 2020 to be implemented, it is important for the government to focus on some of the institutional challenges and behavioral aspects. The higher education ecosystem, and in particular, the government bodies and regulatory bodies need to commit themselves to, in my view, 5 key areas of reform, reimagination, and transformation. These are, first, building trust. We need to build a culture of trust, respect, and collegiality between government agencies, regulatory bodies, and higher education institutions. At present, this is a major challenge and is adversely impacting all our efforts to develop a unified and robust higher education system. Second, transparent decision-making. We need to create a transparent and accountability-based mechanisms for swift decision-making within government agencies and regulatory bodies in a time-bound manner. There are numerous bottlenecks in this effort, and precious time is lost in various aspects of decision-making, and delays being the norm. The third is about institutional independence. We need to empower all higher education institutions, including in the private sector, to take decisions with responsibility and accountability vested with the institutions themselves. There is a need to giving more power and in that process more responsibility to the higher education institutions. Fourth is active and participative consultation. We need to promote active and participative consultation mechanisms with higher education institutions by the government agencies and regulatory bodies, especially while creating new regulations or amending existing regulations that may impact institutions in any manner. Imagine for a moment, we have over 25 regulatory bodies regulating every aspect of higher education. On top of this, you have also state higher education systems, including state higher education councils. As if that was not enough, now we have numerous high court decisions, which at times even conflicts with the regulations, and new interpretations of the way those regulations need to be implemented have come about. So in some ways, the management, the governance, and the administration of higher education system is significantly impacted by this huge regulatory nightmare that we have put ourselves into, and the national education policy has addressed that as well. The fifth aspect of what I think we need to do is to empower what the government of India has called the Institutes of Eminence. By way of full and complete disclosure, OP Jindal Global University has been also recognized as one of the Institutes of Eminence. So has been the KIT University as well. Now we need to empower the Institutes of Eminence and those that have attained graded autonomy to fulfill the vision of Indian universities to become world-class universities and also aspire to achieve high global rankings. This, I believe, is an urgent need for promoting more autonomy and freedom to the IOEs and similarly situated institutions. So while the government has important national priorities to handle, developing trust among all stakeholders, creating transparency with the regulatory system, providing autonomy with responsibility and accountability, and empowering institutions within a participative framework are indispensable for the success of NEP 2020. I strongly believe that NEP is a watershed moment for Indian higher education. Effective and time-bound implementation is what it will make for it to become successful. Let me quickly now spend a bit time on how can we implement the national education policy. Now, of course, as I said earlier, the NEP has a vision to transform the Indian higher education landscape. These are the words that have been used. It relies on significant commitment for policy implementation from all stakeholders, including the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Education Minister. Now, as an academic, when we go deep into policy implementation literature, it shows that all research relating to policy implementation gaps has repeatedly demonstrated that avoiding policy failures is about having robust means, methods, and implementation mechanisms. For all those who are attending this webinar, I would like to draw your attention to a fascinating article by Bob Hudson, David Hunter, and Stephen Peckham, who have identified 4 contributors to policy failure. First, overtly optimistic expectations. Second, implementation in dispersed governance. Third, inadequate collaborative policymaking. And 4, vagaries of the political cycle. This could be the story of most policy failures, not just in India, but around the world. These authors have suggested that there's a need to develop a robust policy support program if we are to be serious about implementing any policy. They write, and I quote, "The 4 threats to successful policy implementation are so widespread that simply hoping that normal procedures and channels will be sufficient to resolve them is no longer realistic. At a minimum, a better understanding is needed of the processes through which policy moves and how at each of these points policy can best be supported. 4 sequential points can be identified: preparation of policy, tracking of policy, supporting the policy, and reviewing the policy," unquote. Now, I would like to propose a 5-point implementation plan to help implement the national education policy. First, the Prime Minister has highlighted a vision to build intellectual and social capital for developing collective consciousness for implementing the NEP, and I welcome that. The next step will be to match it with the establishment of an institutional mechanism for implementation. The successful implementation of NEP requires different types of interventions. It includes coordination and cooperation between the center and the states. It requires, at times, legislative interventions. It might require passing new laws or amendments to existing laws. It can have an impact on increasing in the budgetary framework and augmentation of financial resources with the involvement of interministerial discussions and even fundamental regulatory reforms. So I propose that the Prime Minister's task force need to be created on higher education reforms and can be an advisory body comprising experts from public and private higher education institutions to help the Prime Minister understand and appreciate the bottlenecks and ensure time-bound implementation with fixed accountability. Second, there is a need to establish a national NEP implementation standing committee which select vice chancellors, directors of universities and institutions. This committee will be tasked with creating and monitoring the NEP implementation plan in a time-bound manner. It will have specific powers and functions, including thematic subcommittees and regional committees representing the character of cooperative federalism across India. The committee, located within the Ministry of Education, will be chaired and should be chaired by the Honorable Education Minister, and the member secretary could be the Education Secretary. It should have an ex officio members of all major regulatory bodies, including Chairman of the Bar Council of India and the Chairman of the Medical Council of India, to potentially remove the hurdles faced by higher education institutions in the implementation of the national education policy. The third policy intervention that is needed is to create the National Education Ministers Council, the kind of something equivalent to the GST Council itself, with education ministers of all states and union territories, chaired by the Union Minister for Education, that needs to be constituted. The council will be an important institutional mechanism to monitor the implementation of NEP in states and union territories, and will also serve as a forum to discuss and address implementation issues and to navigate through the diverse perspectives of state governments. The fourth is again the issue of institutes of eminence articulated by the Prime Minister, which contains the vision to develop world-class universities in India. Now, quite remarkably, in the budget speech of 2016, the then Finance Minister, Mr. Arun Jaitley, promised to provide an enabling architecture so that 10 public and 10 private institutions would emerge as world-class teaching and research institutions. This, of course, led to the establishment of IOEs. Today, the vision of IOE need to be integrated with the National Education Policy Implementation Plan, and IOEs need to be empowered with more freedom, flexibility, autonomy, and resources. This will in due course help other universities to also have a robust aspiration and presence in the global university rankings. The fifth is the question of setting up the National Higher Education Philanthropy Council, chaired by the Honorable Education Minister, with private sector participation. Nearly 70% of Indian higher education institutions are private. And believe it or not, more than 70% of Indian students are studying today in private higher education institutions. We must build on this reality to raise financial resources that are critical for the establishment of more private higher education institutions. However, this will require new and innovative institutional mechanisms, tax incentives, endowment frameworks, and other initiatives to incentivize the Indian corporate sector to contribute to the form of individual and corporate philanthropy. The Philanthropy Council could help promote a fundamental reimagination of the tax structure to incentivize potential donors for establishing 3 new development funds. One, the Higher Education Infrastructure Development Endowment Fund. Second, the Higher Education Student Scholarship Endowment Fund. And third, the Higher Education Research Grants Endowment Fund. So, in one of the remarkable books written by a very dear friend and chair of our International Board of Advisors, Professor Peter Schuck of Yale University, entitled "Why Governments Fail So Often and How It Can Do Better," Peter identifies 6 elements for successful policy implementation. 1, incentives. 2, instruments. 3, information. 4, adaptability. 5, credibility. And 6, management. for successful implementation of the NEP, we will need to create stakeholder incentives, formulate instruments in the form of legal, policy, regulatory, and institutional mechanisms, build reliable information repositories, develop adaptability across higher education institutions, regulatory bodies and government agencies, develop credibility through transparent actions and participation of all stakeholders, and hopefully develop sound principles of management. So, as we talked about the vision of an Atmanirbhar university and an Atmanirbhar higher education system in India, it should combine the vision of John Henry Newman's The Idea of a University with the Humboldtian imagination of the modern research university to create the new global university in India, which is multidisciplinary, democratic, inclusive, aspirational, and indeed international. India, I believe, needs to accept that we can fulfill this vision only if we are prepared to take the full responsibility of what it takes to become a truly Atmanirbhar Bharat. I want to end. I have taken nearly 25 minutes, and I'm sorry that we are already late, but thank you very much, Manoj and others, for your patient hearing.
Thank you, Rajkumar. Over to you, Nivedita.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for such a wonderful address and sharing such candid observations with us. Before moving further, I would like to request to all the participants present here to kindly post their questions in the chat box, which will be taken up at the end of the session. Now, I would like to invite our last speaker for the day, Professor Dr. N.K. Chakrabarty, Vice Chancellor of the National University of Juridical Sciences, Kolkata, to say a few words on the theme of the webinar.
Very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Professor Sina, for inviting me and joining this webinar. In fact, it is very much important aspect of education, and particularly legal education, and being the Vice Chancellor of one of the national law universities, I am very much glad to share my thoughts. Already previous speakers, Justice Prasad, Professor Mitro, Mr. Kumar, and Professor Rajkumar also covered almost all the areas which are the important characteristics and the strategies of our new education policy. I will look into one of the most important aspect of this education policy, which is known as equity and accessibility. In Indian context, I think in the background of our economic conditions and backwardness, backward classes, economically weaker sections, this equity and accessibility is the most important aspect of our education policy. Now, as Rajkumar also asserting that we have to look into implementation. As regards implementation, what I can say that by my experience in our NUJs, that as regards equity, the national education policy also provided us that there should be opportunity to leave the 5-year course or 4-year courses whenever after completion of either 1 year, 2 years or 3 years, the student due to either health ground, mental condition or even economic reasons of his family, if wish to withdraw or leave the program. I think in legal education, it is very much essential and it is provided in our education policy. I have experienced after 2 years, one student, mother was crying that he is unable to continue in legal education, not willing, by force and by persuasion, unable to send him back. But as the present regulation and system, we have nothing to do. That boy, 2 years being lost, he is to start again with some other courses. So these things being covered in our new education policy. As regards multidisciplinarity, which is also one of the aspects of our education policy, that can be implemented by evolving a structure or curriculum which we follow from 3rd year to 5th year. There would be a baskets of subjects where a subject can be shared by either 4th year and 5th year students. There is a cap, maybe 40 or 50 in that particular subject given by the teacher, or it may be shared even this semester, 3rd semesters and 5th semester students share this course on citizenship studies. So this multi-dimensional constitution and our legal development gives the autonomy to the teachers to innovate the courses. And this is possible if the management authority thinks that student is our primary concern by which their minds can be satisfied. I think we can adopt the new education policy. As regards the equity and accessibility, there are 2 other aspects which we can, particularly in higher education, in the context of our Indian society or any society, there are economically weaker sections. We have for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, the government sponsored scholarship. But for weaker economically weaker sections, we have almost nothing. For that, if the higher education institution can plan properly, a share of the fund which we raise from the students, we can share on the basis of merit and means policy. And this merit and means policy, or means and merit policy, whatever way you can say, focus that initially 1st year will give more focus and weightage to the means. Gradually, when we'll go to the higher, that means in the 4th year, the granting policy of scholarship would be more on merit than on means. Hereby, more and more students would be in a competition in the learning process, and also they will be very much involved in developing themselves in their education. And at the same time, we are able to help the economically weaker sections in our scholarship policy. So what actually higher education institutions to do, their policy should be framed in such a way that this education policy of equity and accessibility can be merged. Similarly, there are in every institutions now specially able persons, or popularly known PWD students. For them, besides infrastructural some adjustment and facilities, for the blind students, every higher education should develop this accessibility lab for the blinds, by which, with the help of computer and certain software, they can read the books by hearing, pushing the books, placing the books in the machines. They will hear, and they can read the books by using the software attached to the computer. So this type of lab will help the physically specially able students also. So higher education institutions, in its policy, in its strategy to make the equity and accessibility as contemplated in our education, our new education policy, should change. Every institution, higher education, can implement it, just needs its mind and policy. It is not much needed of the money. Within 10 lakhs, one accessibility lab can be developed in any institution in the library. It needs the attitude, it needs the policy change. In matters of legal education, if we come in the context of new education policy, definitely we have to think of how we can interlink with other disciplines like technology or forensic science, as Professor Mitro was telling, and science, commerce, management, law. This should be very much interlinked, interdisciplinary. We have to think how more and more courses can be developed so that it will help the varieties of minds and attitude of the students, which is very much contemplated in our new education policy. What I will try to stress that our new education policy give an opportunity to think in a new way, and there are opportunities to improve and innovate, and we have to use it, and by that we can change our present education system and education result into more achievable and accessible legal education or education in larger sense. Thank you all for giving me opportunity to share my thoughts in few minutes. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Over to you, Nivedita.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your enlightening thoughts. Sir, we'll take up questions then.
Yes, you take the question around 7-8 questions. So you carefully select the question and accordingly you put the question to respective speakers.
Oh, okay, sir. So, sir, we have a few questions here. First question is from Mr. Bhagjan Meena ji. He's asking, what are the provisions in this policy on financial sources to fulfill the goal set? Professor Rajkumar, would you like to answer this question?
Sure. Well, of course, the policy does not give too much of details. It, of course, has an aspiration for a 6% GDP investment in higher education, which is, of course, an increase. But as I told before, there's a lot that can be done. I think we need to really, reimagine the funding structure of our higher education system. Frankly speaking, you cannot, and this is something which we need to accept. You simply cannot build a world-class higher education system without focusing on significant increase in resources. One can debate as to who pays for it, but somebody has to pay for it. It's world-class higher education system in terms of quality faculty and infrastructure and research ecosystem comes with a lot of cost. One of the things that I believe there is enormous scope, and that's something which we have not done enough, is to build on that CSR initiative with regard to the amendment in the companies legislation, which led to the reforms in that area. Frankly, we should do much better. We've not even provided tax incentives on that. I think there's a case for having a sharper focus on funding that should emanate from that source, specifically into higher education system. We also need to revisit the fee structure framework in public universities. I am all for providing 100% scholarship for people who don't have resources and to provide access, but I also don't believe that people who can afford should be charged the same fee in our public education system. There has to be a differential fee structure, and that's the only way by which we can create a more resource-enabled, higher education system.
Thank you, sir. We have another question from Mr. Bhagchan Meenaji. This question is for Professor Chakrabarti. He's asking, how can the interest of students from the weaker sections of society be protected?
My short answer would be, for that every institution require its policy that when my answer is that every higher education needs its own policy for scholarship. Besides, and they first of all, they have to connect the students to the government schemes. Every state and also central government have having full support of the students scholarship, and the institution to connect that the students to the government department so that they can get. In our experience in NOJs, there are many students getting from their state or central the full support, full scholarship of their fees. Besides that, we have our own scholarship policy by which about 100 students, and varies according to their economic situation, the institutional support is given. So institution is to develop this policy so that those who are needed, they will get the support. And also alumni, there are alumni and some of the advocates also we are connected. Sometimes they are also supporting the needy students for their fees, or sometimes for their other supports for going abroad, for higher education. So we are getting support from the good lawyers also. So student facilities can be extended if the institution is active enough, and it can be done only by some taking good policies in the institution.
Thank you, sir. So our last question for the day is from Mr. Santosh Kumar Patro. This question is for Professor Mitra. He's asking, what will be the role of IITs, NITs, IIMs, and other higher education institutions to implement the national education policy at their levels to work towards Atmanirbhar Bharat? And what are the good steps to be taken to educate students to be self-sustainable, employable, and have capabilities to work in any sector? Sir, kindly unmute yourself.
Dan, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Now, some of the issues that IITs are doing, I can explain here now a bit, but there are a lot of things to be explored. I quite agree with Rajkumar that this national policy is only, it has an iceberg character. 1/9 is visible. 8/9 you have to rediscover. And this is one. Now, it is easy to say you will be innovative. Easy to say that it will be restructuring. But how do you do it? What would be the modalities? What is the strategy? That has to be determined by the institutions from different goals perspective. Okay, IITs have got human resources. Now with this human resources, IIT can do a lot of things for the nation, I'm sure. Now it requires a kind of multidisciplinary education. Means what? Multidisciplinary education means that you will add technology education will have a human face. When you give sociology perspective, social perspective, economic perspective, obviously you give a human face and therefore need for this human being. As for example, you have the coronavirus. Now see that there are 2 IITs or 3 IITs, they have already innovated certain programs and they have already suggested that this can be done like this. You know, you can have testing done within 2 hours. Right. So there are a lot of ways. There are many ways IIT and IIM can do. So it is not the one thing that you can always harpoon, but they are actually sitting on merit. And IITs and IIMs, they can certainly make the countries richer.
Nivedita?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I would now like to take the opportunity to propose a vote of thanks. I, on behalf of Indian Law Institute and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all the learned speakers and guests of honor for taking their precious time out of their busy schedule and sharing with us their valuable insights and opinions today. I again thank our honorable speakers and the guest of honor for the day, Honorable Dr. Justice Arijit Pasayat, Professor Dr. N.L. Mitra, Shri Sujeet Kumar ji, Professor Dr. C. Rajkumar, Professor Dr. N.K. Chakrabarti, Professor Dr. Manoj Kumar Sinha for accepting our request and gracing the occasion. We thank you all for being with us today. It's been a great pleasure hearing you all. I also thank all the participants and faculty members from ILI for joining us. Thank you again. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Nivedita. So we leave now? We can.
Yes, sir. Sir, we can't hear you.
I
Sir,
said thank you.
No, we can
Thank
leave,
you.
no?
so
Thank
Mitra
you,
sir is saying
Rajkumar.
something, I think.